Good afternoon. Welcome to our August 2024 First Friday event. Good to see everyone here, taking uh, a Friday evening out of your busy schedules. Really glad to see you today. Um, as you know, our First Friday events are monthly informative virtual meetings scheduled at this time on the first Fridays, of course, of every month. Of course, organized by the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy, ECOP. And I guess I'm assuming that everyone knows me. Introduce myself. I'm Vonda Richardson. I'm chair-elect for ECOP, standing in for our chair, Damona Doy, who is enjoying a fabulous vacation. But you have me today. And I'm Extension Administrator at Florida A&M University. Like I mentioned, the First Friday events are sponsored by ECOP, specifically designed for 1890 Extension Administrators and Extension Deans and Directors from 1862s and 1994s. For the benefit of the system, we are membership and system oriented. For today's session, we would like for you to engage if there are any questions, we will ask that you raise your hand or use the comment feature to ask any questions. Of course, at the end of today's session, there will be a survey, and we would love to have your feedback on this session, as well as how we can improve on the First Friday events. This session will be recorded along with supporting and other information on the ECOP Monday Minute. So look for that in your emails on Monday from Bill. And then, of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at www.youtube at ECOP Office 3901. And so I want to get started. Well, you want me to go ahead and introduce the Professional Development Committee? This particular event is sponsored they've been designed by the ECOP Professional Development Committee, representatives from each one of the 5 regions. Dr. Carl Martin is the chair, and he's the Dean and Director for University of Wisconsin Division of Extension. Dr. Rich Bonanno, Vice Provost for Outreach and Engagement and Extension Director at North Carolina A&T. I'm sorry, North Carolina State University. I'm sorry. Dr. John Boren, Associate Dean and Director, New Mexico State University, and Dr. Raymond Shange, Associate Dean and 1890 Administrator at Tuskegee. We would love to express our thanks to Dr. Ken LaValle, University of New Hampshire, for serving as our chair through mid-March. And this is the Professional Development Committee who will basically design this First Friday event. And so what I will do now for the First Friday event, today's topic is the National Land Grant Impacts Database. And we've got an awesome team of partners to provide us information on how we can access that database in order to tell our story as a system, but also in our individual states, because we understand how important it is to impart to stakeholders and those persons who value what we do, actually what we do, and what we do for our communities in our respective states. So I will turn it over now to the team.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richardson. And my name is Shelley Nichols Richardson, and I serve as an Associate Dean in our College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences at the University of Illinois. And the reason that I'm here with you this afternoon is partly because of that role, but primarily because I'm serving as the chair of the Communications and Marketing Committee through the BAA and serve as your ECOP rep to that committee. And so we just want to say thank you very much to everyone for joining us this afternoon and sitting in to listen and engage and respond to and react to an update related to the National Land Grant Impacts Database. So what we intend to do today is to reintroduce the National Land Grant Impacts Database to cooperative extension leadership. It is the nation's most extensive repository of the land grant system's collective impact statement in research, education, and extension. I know that you all are familiar with it, you work with it, you encourage folks to report and to submit impact statements. And I know that you've had various training across the years and encouraged training for your field staff and for your personnel to submit those impact statements. In the fall of 2023, the APLU Board on Agricultural Assembly began administering the National Impacts Database after it had been at Texas A&M at another location. And so in collaboration with the Communications and Marketing Committee, those changes have been occurring and that transition period has taken place. The team has made a whole host of improvements to the database, and you'll learn more about where exactly the database is being held and administered and how that's being facilitated. And so you'll hear from folks that are serving with the Extension Foundation and with the CMC committee and the work that they're doing and the roles that they play. First up is Kim Scotto, who is the point person at APLU for our database, and she is going to introduce the agenda today and introduce you to today's presentation. So with that, I will turn to Kim.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. So today we'll be hearing from Frankie Gould. She's the Associate Vice President for Strategic Communications and Outreach at the LSU Ag Center, and Sarah Delheimer, the Program Coordinator for Multi-State Research Fund Impacts. Frankie and Sarah, they are members of the BAA Communications and Marketing Committee, and they are co-chairs of the NIDB Communications team. The two of them have also run dozens of impact writing trainings over the years, so they're kind of the experts in this area. Frankie and Sarah will give a brief overview of the database, who uses it, and how you and your teams can participate. After that, we'll hear from Mark Locklear, who's a project manager from the Extension Foundation. He is the lead back-end developer for the database. So APLU brought the Extension Foundation on board in fall 2023 as a technical contractor to not only handle the initial transfer of the database from Texas A&M to APLU, but to also make major continuous updates that increase, the functionality, accessibility, and security of the database. So the CMC kind of gives our visions and ideas to Mark, and he makes them a reality. At the end, we'll have a designated time for Q&A, but please, as Vonda mentioned, feel free to ask questions during the presentations. And I think with that, I will pass it over to Frankie and Sarah.
Good afternoon. I'm Frankie Gould. It's great that Bill invited us. We always like to talk about the NIDB and the beautiful things that are happening with this. And so I'm going to talk to you about what it is and why do we need it. And we often ask ourselves the question, so what and who cares? And if you answer those two questions when you're thinking about impact, you're going to have a good story. So this is part of the land grant university system. As you know, we're a very unique American institution at conducting innovative research, extension, and teaching across the United States and the territories. And we're publicly funded, so we are obliged or obligated to report what we're doing with those public funds, and we do that through writing our impacts and putting those in the database so they can be accessible to the public. The database is the most extensive repository of land grant systems collective impact statements in the area of research, education, and extension. And it serves as a comprehensive resource for the land grant system to tell our stories. So we want to focus on impact, research, and extension, not just SNFA. These are for any of your impacts that are funded with state money, with private money, with commodity money, with federal money. It's not just NIFA funded impacts. Anybody can search this database at any time, 24/7. It's publicly available for people to look at. And that's where you can go and find those nuggets of information that funding agencies, elected officials, medias, and others may be looking for. It's not cluttered up with project proposals or technical reports. It's just our impact story. We are telling the difference that we make in everybody's life every day. So it's all funding sources, and it is an example of not just an individual institute database, but a collective database where we're working together to solve problems. Another feature of the NIDB is that it provides a little bit of quality control, because only authorized users can be assigned to actually put impacts into the database. And those users are assigned by the extension and research directors in your states. And they are usually what we usually like to have is an evaluator and a communicator that are working together to put these in the database, and have a good understanding of what impact reporting is. The submission process is a standard form. It's very easy to use. It has a lot of pulled down choices and tags so that it can be very searchable. And it's very useful in providing the information you need for your impact statement. So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to report your impact. Is because it shows your accountability. It tells your story. It tells a difference that you've made in everyday lives of people and your states. It proves your value and effectiveness. It catches attention and increases your visibility. It raises awareness and interest and support, and it influences funding and other decisions, decision makers, legislators, congresspeople, whoever might be looking for information about supporting your land grant institution. So who uses the database? It's not just something that you put things in and it goes into a cave and you never see it again. These are used very extensively. They're used by land grant universities to fulfill reporting requirements like federal reports and other reports. But they also serve as an archive for future uses to track progress, to bolster your proposals and funding requests. Media communicators use it to get story ideas, prepare pitches, new press releases, articles, talking points for your administrators. I know I use it all the time for my vice president. I know Faith Peppers at NIFA uses it almost daily to gather information to write talking points for Dr. Misra and sometimes the Secretary of Agriculture. Funding officials, funding agencies, donors, they like to see what the return on their investment is, and it influences their decisions. Community members want to see what institutions are doing with their funding and the progress on issues that they care about, maybe water quality, food security, those kinds of things. So this is an example of what you're going to find in the database. We have a series of summary statements on 6 topic areas. And then each one of those topic areas has a summary sheet and a web story. And in that web story, you can click on the button at the bottom and it takes you back into the database so you can see the complete submission of that impact report. The same thing on the summary sheets, except we have different states listed, and it's based around a topic. This is food security resources for local communities. So these bullets are about what those states have done for food pantries or issues like that. The example, that first bullet is from University of Illinois Extension, and they had a donation program and raised money and got donations to for lean protein for food pantries in their state, and they were able to collect and process 346 deer, providing what amounted to an estimated of 83,000 meals. And it has the source, the funding source, and then a link back to the complete impact story. Each year we gather together writers that represent each region in the country and the 1890s and the 1862s. And we gather either face-to-face, face-to-face and virtually if they can't come meet face-to-face with us. And we develop these impact summary sheets and stories around the first part of February every year in a matter of a day and a half. We come together and in this past year, it was 35 summary sheets and 50 web stories that we developed in that time frame, and those are posted to the NIDB website, and they are used by CARET members and other administrative heads when they go to the Hill at the end of February, 1st of March, and then it's used by others throughout the year as well as examples of how we collaborate and to solve a particular issue. Sarah will probably will show you after a little bit demos on the website to see how you can get to some of this information. Let's look at how other ways we use it. So NIFA pulls a lot of our impacts and uses it in their annual reports. FNEP also has an annual report that you see a lot of the impacts bullets in, and again, they go back to the database so you can see the complete story. Next, this is an example that Maggie Lawrence at NIFA puts together a weekly NIFA update. It comes out every, I think, Wednesday, and she always tries to have something in there from that she can pull from the database. In this case, she pulled a bunch of different information on invasive species. And if you click on Learn More, it goes to an actual blog, and you can get to the impact from there. If you can click on the next one, Sarah, there we go. So when you click on Learn More, it comes to this blog, and that's a longer piece. It has intro, and then it has in bullets, a bunch of different bullets from different states about what they're doing in that state related to invasive species. And then you have a link like where it says Pennsylvania State University project, and they click on that and it goes back to the complete impact report. And she does this weekly. So that's another way that they're used. As I said earlier, they pull impacts to write talking points and speeches for the leadership at NIFA and USDA. I use it to pull information for my vice president, and a lot of other communicators as well pull the information to write news stories and talking points. This is an example of an impact that was pulled, it looks like in December of 2023. It had 601 views, and it was on this Ag is America site, and which is through APLU. And it was impact on how using information from Florida Extension and Research helped a grower save his $350,000 poinsettia crop. Additionally, this picture was a submission into the database. So now with our new system that the Extension Foundation has put together for us and upgraded for us. We can now submit images with our stories, with our impacts, so that they can be used in social media, in publications, in news stories. And I think now Sarah is going to show you how to use the database.
Yeah, thanks, Frankie. I will take you through how to access those main functions and features on the website. So there are kind of three main ways that most folks are using the NIDB. That's searching for impacts, browsing those prepared materials, those featured impact stories and summaries that Frankie mentioned, and then inputting or managing your institution's impact statements. So first, we're going to look at what it's like to submit impact statements to the database. And the first step of that is to find and assign your inputters. As Frankie mentioned, we like to see inputters that are communicators or evaluators that have, a good sense of how to choose and write and submit good impacts. If you aren't sure who your inputters are currently or need to assign someone new, you can contact agcoms@aplu.org. That'll go, I believe, straight to Kim, and she'll get you squared away. And that's also the general contact email for anything NIDB. If you have comments, questions, that's the email that's listed on the website. And you can contact them there. Some notes on timing for inputting. The NIDB is always open, so that means inputters can submit statements anytime. And we do encourage inputters to submit throughout the year. This helps keep the database fresh with the latest impacts. But we realize that many institutions prefer to submit more like once a year, often aligning with their institutional reporting calendar or some sort of internal process. In that case, we encourage you to submit those annual impact statements to the database by the end of that year, ideally, or mid-January of the following year at the latest. And that makes sure that those impact statements are available when Frankie and I and that NIDB comms team meet to prepare our feature stories and summaries. But again, the NIDB is always open for submissions. Every impact statement you submit, no matter when you submit it, will be immediately available in the database for anyone searching. Let's hop over to the website and take a quick demo of the inputting process. So the home page for the database is just landgrantimpacts.org. And then up at the top, let me zoom in a little bit. That'll be better. Up at the top, you'll see database login. And remember, as Frankie said, only authorized users can input statements. So that's why there's a login process. So you click there. Let me quickly get in. Perfect. So once you log in, it will pull up this My Impacts page. And this is where inputters will see a list of all of the statements that they've submitted. Inputters can add a statement by clicking the Add Statement button. This drop-down menu will be different for different inputters. For me, it says Research National. That's because I input statements for those multi-state research projects. But for example, you might have an inputter that is authorized to input statements for both research and extension. Their drop-down menu would give them the option of entering either kind of statement. And then the form is the same for all inputters. You have title, a text box for relevance, what's the issue, why is it an issue, the response, the actions that are being taken to address the issue, and then the results, the outputs and the resulting impacts of that response. And then public value statement. So how the work benefits, our broader communities, environments, economies, et cetera. That's that big, so what, who cares part that really makes these impact stories valuable. Beyond the statement text, there are many different drop-down menus and checkboxes. These are really important to fill out. Notice here on funding source how many different options there are, including many options outside of NIFA, because again, the NIDB showcases all different types of land grant work, not just NIFA funded projects and programs. Inputters can provide a contact name and email that gives readers a way to follow up about the story. If the statement is about work that was a collaboration between institutions or between research and extension, you can indicate that integration here. You can see that you can select different experiment stations or extension groups. And that's another way that the NIDB can really show those linkages across the system and across the mission areas. Inputters can provide a short synopsis if they want. And then they can include resource links. You could attach supplemental materials, like a link to maybe a peer-reviewed article, if this were a research statement, or a link to a program website or some sort of longer article or story related to the work discussed in the impact statement. You can also upload an image, and as Frankie mentioned, that's a kind of new feature, and it's exciting because it gives users of the database an image that pairs with that impact statement that they can download and use if they want to share the impact statement on social media or write up their own story featuring the impact statement. Selecting a focus area and selecting tags will help categorize the statement, and really filling out all of the form, all of the text boxes, all of these drop-down menus and check boxes, all of those things really help make the statement easier to search for and filter for and easier to use. Down at the bottom, you have your save and publish options. And once you publish, you do have ways to go in and edit or retract statements. We'll go back over here. That's what it looks like to submit a statement. Let's go in and look at how to search the database. We're back on that homepage, landgrantimpacts.org. And we wanted to make sure that users find plenty of easy ways into the database. So you'll see up here, you can view database, you have search impacts, and down here you also could click here to search the database. Any of those options is going to take you to the search page. And this is where impact statements live. And notice I did not have to sign in to search. Anyone can search the database anytime. On the left, you have all of your different filters. You can filter for statements submitted within a certain time frame. You could enter a keyword search. You can filter by region, state, designation, so 1890 or 1862 institutions, extension versus research, a specific institution. You might be looking for statements submitted in a particular year or statements in a particular focus area, or even more detailed, you could filter by tag, and our tags represent kind of popular topics. And then of course, funding source. You could filter by funding source. So let's say that we want to look at extension impacts in the Western region. We're going to pick Oregon for this example. And you can see on the right here, this list of impact statements with updating as I applied those filters. And you can see these totals represent now the number of statements available that meet those criteria. If you scroll through those, you can actually get kind of a really quick, nice overview of all the work Oregon Extension is doing, to impact lives. If you click on one of those impact statements, you can see how the submission form that we just looked at looks once it's all filled out. And you can see we have some nice story text. You can see the funding source. You can scroll down, and this one actually is an integrated statement. You can see that this work includes some collaborators from the experiment station. We have a nice statement synopsis. This would be a great little chunk poll if you wanted to share the impact statement on social media. They've given us a nice, concise blurb that you could pull, share the impact statement. I've also provided a resource link. It looks like it goes to a story, might share more information, more details about this work. And then down here at the bottom, we have copy direct link. This is a really important bit. This is where you're going to copy the link to this specific impact statement. You'll copy it, copy to your clipboard, and you can go over and paste it in an email, a social media post, whatever you want. Notice if you just use the URL at the top of this page, I'll just show you what that looks like. If you just use the URL, it's going to take you back to the generic search page. And you can see that's indicated, the URL just ends in search. Back on our statement, if we copy that direct link and paste it over, it takes us to that specific impact statement. And you can see that indicated this number at the end. That's the unique number for this impact statement. So just make sure when you're trying to send somebody a link to a specific statement that you're using that copy direct link button. Oops. I was searching the database and kind of filtering through all of the available impact statements. I do want to also show you how you can access those featured stories and summaries, those prepared materials that Frankie mentioned. So those live on the website under featured impacts. So we'll go there now. Featured impacts. And this takes you to what is essentially a blog. So the database that we just searched features all of the kind of raw impact statements that everyone has submitted. And then this blog features the most outstanding recent impact statements, kind of gives them some extra polish. So let's look at some featured materials under environmental stewardship. You can see there's lots of posts available. We have them broken down into summaries and then our stories. So if we look at this invasive species summary, you can see the web version of it is available. And then there's also a PDF version that you could view, download, share, print. And kind of as Frankie pointed out, these summaries have a nice little intro paragraph about the issue, and then those different bullets from different states addressing that issue. And again, all of the attribution in each bullet, including a link back to, sorry, my internet is going a little slowly right now. This will take you over to the original impact statement in the database. I promise it will. Except for me now. It worked a second ago. Sorry about that. That's what impact summaries look like. The impact stories are more like just a kind of a traditional blog post. You can see they have a nice photo, a short story, nice polished, a little bit shorter than that, the raw impact statement. And then also a link back to the original statement, which we are definitely having some connection issues to the database, it seems, right now. I don't know if maybe they're in there poking around as we speak. Interesting. So that is how to input, search, and browse the NIDB. We do have some additional training materials available on the website. You can find those under impact writing tips. One thing to note is that we are sort of in the process of updating those materials to reflect all of the recent changes and upgrades. Frankie and I also, and some others on the team, provide, kind of webinar trainings, different things like that throughout the year as well, including kind of more detailed training for inputters on how to write and submit impact statements. So lots of additional resources for how to use the NIDB. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Mark, and he will tell you all about all of the great work Extension Foundation has been doing to help us improve the database. I think you can all tell from this little demo, if you saw it before all these improvements and are seeing it now, it's a lot more user-friendly and has a lot more functionality. And it's become a really great resource for the land grant system.
Okay, thanks, Sarah, and others that are on. My name is Mark Locklear. I'm IT project manager, web developer with the Extension Foundation. For those of you who may not know who the Extension Foundation is, we're a 503c nonprofit, and we're here to serve the cooperative extension service. We often can do things that, other organizations or groups within the land grant institution system and the cooperative extension service can't do. So, and this is probably a good example of that. Without us, I guess it might have been up to APLU or other groups to go out and find their own contractor to keep the application up to date. So this is just one example of the kind of work we get to do. I will mention my colleague Aaron Wybe is not on this call, but he's a key player here. He works alongside me. He's mostly interfaces with Kim and other folks at APLU to understand the requirements that they want implemented, and then he passes that off to me, and then we have a contractor on our end that we work with to actually implement those things. So first, let's sort of lay the groundwork. Who's doing what? So obviously APLU and the communications and marketing group, they're the ones that sort of set the vision for what they want the application to do, what the feature requests or improvements might look like. On the Extension Foundation side, Kenny Elston is a web developer that we have on staff here, myself, and then Aaron. Kenny, most of his time has been spent. There's really two pieces that, it looks seamless if you're browsing from the web, but the nationalimpacts.org, I think, is the primary website. That's actually a WordPress site. So there's a separate set of functionality that's there. And then the actual National Impacts Database is a separate application that sort of houses all the actual impacts and I guess you'd say the majority of the features that Sarah showed off. Nomadic is the contractor we work with. It just, they say sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be good. I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina, and Nomadic is actually a local software development contractor here locally. I'm a community college instructor. A couple of my students have went to work for these guys, and so I sort of knew about them that way. After initially learning about National Impacts Database and the technology that was behind it, I knew that Nomadic had that they actually specialized in that specific technology. So it just sort of worked out well that that they had an expertise. They already had an expertise in the specific technology that backed the National Impacts Database. So that's how we ended up working with them. And then system users we've got here too to give us feedback. Again, you can sort of imagine this life cycle of where we receive a request, our contractor implements it, and then we have a development server that's set up that once those features have been implemented there, we ask Kim and others at APLU to test those features out, make sure it's what they're looking for. If there's any improvements that need to be made or modifications, they'll pass that back to us. We'll pass it back to the contractor, and then that life cycle sort of goes through until, okay, once the feature is ready to actually be pushed to production and be live on the website, then those features are pushed out. So I'm going to go through sort of the handful of the phases that we went through. I think we started last fall, so this would have been fall of 2023. When we initially made the transition from Texas to the Extension Foundation, I mean, the first order of business was, upgrading the existing system. There were a few security vulnerabilities, things like that. I mean, the analogy I like to use is sort of, if you go buy a new used car, the oil might need to be changed, the tires might need to be checked, those kinds of things. So there was about 3-4 months of work there where we were just doing those things to get the framework up to date. So again, any bug fixes or anything like that were applied. As far as the end user seeing those things, there was no core functionality that changed. That was all stuff that was behind the scenes, just getting the software up to date. So we were at a point where, okay, now we're ready to move forward with any new features that we might want to implement. So phase one, so again, the first 60 days upgrading the software framework. Laravel is the framework they use, which is a very common PHP MySQL framework. So there's that. We moved, we host the system on Amazon Web Services, or AWS, cloud-based platform. Backups are done on a nightly basis there. And, again, as I said, just addressed various security vulnerabilities and things of that nature. Phase two, I won't go through each one of these: updating tags, search filters, just some general functionality. A lot of the stuff that Sarah shared, I mean, those were things that we did. A lot of these things were in place already, but I mean, we're all probably familiar enough with web applications. We know that things like search features, things like that can have different behaviors depending on the platform you're on. So there were some specific things that that APLU wanted to do there. And the other thing is, I think there was somewhat of a backlog of new features that APL had been wanting to implement for years now that Texas just didn't have the ability to do, and so there was a bit of catching up on our part to implement those things. Again, adding the image upload, I think was a big part of that. The way the application previously worked, there was sort of a standard set of a handful of images that you had to choose from. You couldn't upload a custom image. And a lot of things like that are common on modern web applications now. So again, a lot of what we're doing is not like anything whiz bang new, but just what you come to expect from a modern web application. Let's see, I've got this dated for November 2023. Again, allow users to upload their own images. Editing impacts was often an issue, that once an impact was submitted to go back and make changes to it. So we added that, and then again a few different check boxes and specific tags that you could put on impacts were part of the fixes that we did. December through January, again, more updates on the tag interface, email notifications when users were created. Again, common workflows that you're used to in modern web applications weren't there. For instance, if you added a new user, I think Kim was doing that at the time. She had to send an email to the user and share their username and password with them, rather than most modern web applications. You'll sign up for a user, you get an email notification letting you know that you've signed up, and then you can obviously you can set your own password too. So that was part of the functionality that we updated there. And then again, there were some filter options, in this case filter impacts by submission year, and then also just some label changing statement year to submission year. Just a screenshot of what the tag interface looks like. Just a note on that. Again, there was already some functionality that was in place related to tags, but essentially we had to pull all that out with the improvements that we wanted to make. Sometimes it's better to go in and sort of start from scratch. So with that particular portion of the application, we went in and pulled the tags out and basically built that portion from scratch. I mean, another issue there was giving APOU the ability to go in and manage tags. Tags were sort of hard coded into the system on the back end, so they weren't very dynamic. Anytime you wanted to add a tag, Kim had to contact us. I had to go into the back end of the database and add a tag that way. So again, now just adding the flexibility for Kim and others to be able to go in and modify tags. Okay, so this is sort of the next few slides are sort of currently where we're at. Again, things like changing the background color of tags. There were some admin issues for overriding impact statements, ability to select null statements under the focus filter. I'm going to go quickly here as I'm getting close to my time. So this is sort of what we've got in progress now, working on the WYSIWYG interface for entering and modifying impact statements, forcing tags to be alphabetized, password reset, and then upcoming features we've got here, adding 1994 institutions to the list. Again, there's some changes around default images, updates to primary, secondary funding sources, and then we're also looking at the ability to add Google Analytics to the site. So you'll be able to get some reporting with regard to what pages are being visited most, how often, and from where. And then just a couple of things on the WordPress site is a separate website based on WordPress. Again, we host that on the Pressable platform, and again, just a handful of features and improvements that we're going to be making to that site also. And with that, I will stop sharing and happy to answer any questions anyone has. And
Does anybody have questions?
I was gonna say, I'm not sure if I was supposed to wrap things up, but if anybody has any closing remarks, feel free to do it.
About the front end or the back end of the database, the process?
Are there any questions? Let me check the chat right quick. I don't think there's anything in there though. Okay. No questions. Thank you all for an awesome presentation. Again, I want to remind you that this presentation is recorded and will also be in the Monday Minute as well as on the YouTube channel. Just a little closing notes, save the dates. The National Extension Directors and Administrators meeting is coming up September 17th through the 19th. And registration is there on that site. And also October 4th, 2024, the Civil Rights Review Process, Lessons Learned and Requirement of a Language Access Plan will be our next First Friday event for the month of October. Please be reminded there's a feedback survey. If you would take a picture of the QR code there or use the link that's supplied on the screen. Thank you all. We appreciate it and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Vonda.
Thank you all. Thank you. It was awesome. I got a lot of new tidbits. I admit that I'm very, very slack with it. So I'm gonna I got a lot of notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.